It begins with a pause, a message you don't send, a call you don't return. One day becomes a week becomes a month, and after a while, people stop saying your name out loud. They'll tell themselves a story that you got arrogant, that you got bitter, that you think you're above them now, but that's not what it is. Most of the time, it's simpler and darker. Your nervous system learned something. That closeness has a price, and you were the one paying it. So you start doing the only thing that still feels clean. You stop reaching first, not for attention, not for revenge, for self-respect. Because there's a kind of connection that doesn't warm you, it drains you. And when you finally step back, it looks like cruelty. But it's often a response, not a personality. Repeated disappointment teaches the same lesson every time. Hope costs, and the bill always finds you. So you cut off the noise, not because you hate people, because you're tired of carrying relationships alone. In the next parts, I'll show you what this pattern really is, how it forms, how it hardens, why it starts to feel safer than people. And later, I'll give you one practical tool from the rebuild. Just one. Not the naive kind, the smart kind. A way to give different people different levels of access. So it doesn't have to be all or nothing. You don't cut people off in one dramatic night. Most of the time, it starts as fatigue, not anger, not a speech, just a quiet tiredness that keeps coming back. You notice the pattern, conversations that lean on you but never return to you, messages that arrive only when someone needs something, promises that sound warm in the moment and then evaporate. And for a long time, you tolerate it, because you've been the reliable one, the listener, the one who shows up. But then comes the moment that changes the math. Not a fight, a need. You reach out, finally, not for attention, for help, for something real. And what meets you is silence, or a thin sentence that pretends to be concern, just enough to look decent, not enough to carry you. That's when your mind writes a rule it won't announce out loud. Need makes me weak. Distance makes me safe. After that, explaining yourself starts to feel like begging. So you stop. You don't debate. You don't plead for basic decency. You simply become harder to reach. You begin budgeting people. Energy becomes currency. If the return is zero, you stop spending, and something shifts inside you. Not hatred, indifference. Hatred still means you care. Indifference means hope has already died, and you're too tired to revive it. That's why your exit looks cold from the outside, because it's not emotional, it's administrative. You don't slam the door, you just stop holding it open. Your identity changes too. You used to be the available one. Now you're the person who answers when it's right, not when it's demanded. There's an older version of this move. Montaigne did it in his own way, withdrawing from public noise into his tower, not to punish anyone, but to reclaim his mind. A retreat, not a tantrum. Self-possession. That's the part most people miss. Cutting people off isn't always a performance. Sometimes it's a correction, a decision to stop paying for closeness with your dignity. And once you've made that decision, you rarely announce it. You just live it. You don't need a lecture to understand what war does to a person. It doesn't just change what you think. It changes what your body trusts. When conflict sits close to your life, certainty becomes a luxury, not a goal. A luxury. So your mind starts hunting for the only thing it can still control, what you let in. Your priorities narrow, not because you became selfish, because you ran out of room. You stop tolerating social theater. You stop spending energy on performances. When the ground feels unstable, you don't decorate the house. You check the doors, and you learn who is real faster than you wanted to. Not through speeches, through small movements. Who checks in without needing something. Who asks one clean question and waits for an answer. who stays present when there's nothing entertaining to offer, and who disappears the moment it's inconvenient, who returns only when the air is light again. That's the part people don't see. They think you're becoming distant, but sometimes you're just watching. War also breaks rhythm. Messages arrive late, plans collapse, voices go quiet for reasons that have nothing to do with love. Relationships can become fragile just from logistics. Not because feelings died, because life refuses to cooperate. So your nervous system adapts. It becomes sharper, not wiser, sharper. You start noticing tone changes like their weather. A shorter reply, a longer pause. The way someone avoids a direct sentence. You feel it in your chest before you can explain it. And you detect excuses faster, not because you're paranoid, because you've seen the pattern. A promise that floats, a soon that never lands. Then the filter appears, a survival filter. Small circle, clear roles, no wasted words. You don't want 10 people who can't hold weight. You want 2 who can. And when you watch strangers argue online, loudly, about things they don't have to live through, something in you goes flat. Not anger, disgust, a quiet refusal. You stop offering your attention to noise. From the outside, it looks like you're getting colder. But often it's something else. You're becoming selective, because randomness feels dangerous. So you begin making cuts, not to punish, not to prove a point, but to reduce rememberable pain. It's triage. You keep what keeps you functional, and you let the rest fall away. That's why cutting people off can look brutal, because the decision happens inside you long before anyone notices. By the time you go quiet, you're not being dramatic. You're conserving what you need to survive. There's a mistake people make when they talk about forgiveness. They confuse it with access. Forgiveness is what you do inside your own chest. It's the decision to stop feeding the wound with daily poison. It's the refusal to keep replaying the same scene until it becomes your whole identity. Access is different. Access is a door, and a door is not a moral obligation. You can release bitterness without reopening the room where you were harmed. You can stop wishing revenge and still refuse to stand in the same place with the same person while they reach for the same knife. That isn't cruelty, it's clarity. Some people will try to make you feel guilty for this. They'll talk about endless tolerance as if it's proof of purity, as if a good person is required to stay available, stay reachable, stay soft, no matter how many times they are drained. But a life can't survive constant leaks. If every act of mercy becomes another invitation to be used, then what you call virtue turns into self-erasure. And you don't become holy by disappearing. Wisdom isn't just kindness. Wisdom is discernment. It's knowing the difference between someone who is weak and someone who is unsafe. It's knowing when compassion is actually enabling. It's knowing that you are allowed to protect what is fragile in you. You don't owe full access to anyone who has repeatedly proven they handle you carelessly. And this isn't foreign to faith. Even in the Christian story, there is withdrawal. There are moments of distance. Jesus steps away to be alone. He doesn't scatter himself into every demand. He isn't ruled by the crowd's hunger, and he doesn't entrust himself to everyone because he knows what people can be when they want something. That's not cynicism. That's a boundary that doesn't hate. So if you've cut someone off and you've been carrying the quiet guilt of it, understand what you're really doing. You're separating forgiveness from access. You're letting your heart unclench without handing your life back to the hands that bruised it. You can keep your compassion and you can keep your door locked. Cutting people off can feel like a clean solution because distance looks like control. And it does protect you from disappointment, from the slow, familiar moment when you realize you cared more than the other person did. But the protection has a price. Your world gets smaller, not dramatically, quietly. One message you don't answer, one invitation you don't accept. One, "I'll do it later," that turns into a month. And over time, something else happens. Your ability to trust doesn't just disappear with the wrong people, it weakens in general. Even with the rare ones who would treat you well, because your mind stops asking, "Who is safe?" and starts asking, "When will this turn on me?" So the smallest problems begin to feel heavier, not because they're worse than before, because you're carrying them alone. There's no second pair of eyes, no outside perspective, no room to exhale. That sentence, "I don't need anyone," can turn into armor. Useful in an emergency, but dangerous when you keep wearing it, because the same thing that blocks disappointment also blocks repair. Then you start confusing peace with emptiness. Silence feels clean. Silence doesn't argue. Silence doesn't abandon you. So you call it stability, even when it's just numbness, and there's a quieter danger people don't admit. Your standards rise. Not standards for character, standards for perfection, for someone who never disappoints. And no human can pass that test, so you end up safe. And lonely, not the temporary loneliness of a hard season, the kind that becomes a habit, the kind that's hard to reverse once it starts feeling normal. You didn't cut people off because you enjoy emptiness. You cut them off because the old way of living was too expensive. So, if you're going to rebuild, you don't rebuild with hope as a strategy. You rebuild with structure. Start with one simple correction. Not everyone gets the same access to you. Some people are only allowed the surface, a greeting, a few messages, nothing that reaches your ribs. Some people earn the middle layer, a real conversation, a shared hour, a small trust, and a very small number, almost always smaller than you think, earn the inner circle. The place where you can be tired, uncertain, human. This isn't cruelty, it's design. Because the mistake wasn't that you cared. The mistake was that you gave full access to people who had never paid the price of being careful with you. So don't announce a new philosophy. Don't deliver speeches. You don't need the drama of a final statement. Use small tests, quiet ones. Share something minor, a small truth, and watch what happens to it. Does it stay safe? Or does it become entertainment, gossip, leverage? Ask for something small, not a rescue, not a life-saving favor, just a modest effort, and watch if they show up. Not with grand promises, with actual movement, because what matters isn't intensity, it's reciprocity. Some people are loud in the beginning. They burn hot, they speak in guarantees, but the ones who are real are usually ordinary, consistent. They don't make you chase. They don't disappear when you stop performing. So stop grading people by emotion. Grade them by pattern. Then, when you need boundaries, keep them short. One sentence, clean. I can't do this right now. I'm not available for that. No debate. No apology that turns your boundary into a negotiation. You're not trying to win an argument. You're trying to protect your life. And understand this, you will feel a pull to chase closure, to make them understand, to explain the full story, to finally be seen. But don't run back to the same door that never opened. If someone didn't give you care, they won't suddenly give you understanding. And the more you explain, the more it starts to sound like you're asking permission. So let the closure be your decision, not their reaction. This is how you keep your standards without turning into paranoia. You don't need to assume everyone is dangerous. You only need to stop ignoring the evidence when someone is careless. You keep the door, but you decide who gets the key. And you don't hand it over because you feel lonely. You hand it over because their behavior proves they can carry it. That's the difference. Not open, not closed, just disciplined. If you want more videos like this, calm, dark, and practical, subscribe. And if you've ever had to disappear just to protect your peace, leave one word in the comments. Silence. Cutting people off was your emergency exit. It kept you breathing when the room filled with noise, with demands, with the same empty promises repeated until they meant nothing. But an emergency exit isn't meant to become a home. You're not cold. You're exhausted from carrying relationships alone. Now you're learning to carry only what's real.